Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to completely demystify modern aviation safety protocols. And to do that, we're comparing two very different recent incidents. One took place thousands of feet in the air, and the other happened right down on the ground. By putting these two side by side, we're going to uncover exactly how strict, meticulously crafted procedures can mean the absolute difference between a textbook success and a multi-million-dollar disaster. Just imagine for a second, you're miles above the ocean on a long transatlantic flight, and suddenly there's a mid-air crisis. What actually goes on in the cockpit? How does the crew react? Well, it's super easy to imagine total chaos, right? But the reality is actually entirely different. We're gonna look at how incredibly rigorous protocols instantly transform potential panic into a highly controlled, flawlessly executed safety operation. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a mid-air emergency over Europe, the anatomy of a fuel dump, and the safe return. Then we'll shift over to a collision on the tarmac, unpack the NTSB's final report, and finish up with the million-dollar legal battle. Section 1. Mid-air emergency over Europe, Alaska Airlines Flight AS-181. Our story kicks off on July 19, 2026. Alaska Airlines Flight 181 was a brand new 787-9 Dreamliner heading from Rome to Seattle. Everything started off totally normal as they climbed to a cruising altitude of 34,000 feet, making their way across Italy and France. But suddenly, this routine long-haul flight shifted gears. The crew detected abnormal vibrations coming from their GNX engines. Now, they didn't just panic. Instead, they elected not to risk an oceanic crossing and initiated a textbook response. When you look at the precise timeline here, this 5.5-hour saga played out with just incredible discipline. Departing Rome at 15:45, they made a really sharp U-turn over the southeastern United Kingdom at 17:45. By 18:15, they broadcast an emergency code and safely touched back down in Rome at 21:15. It's literally a masterclass in how a crew proactively manages a developing situation over several hours. Let's talk about that code they broadcast at 18:15. You might hear Squawk 7700 and think, wow, that sounds like imminent doom. But actually, it isn't. It's simply a vital communication tool. By setting their transponder to this code, the crew is instantly alerting air traffic control that they need priority handling. In this specific case, it allowed them to seamlessly coordinate their diversion with authorities like the French DGAC and Britain's NATS. Section 2. Anatomy of a fuel dump. Shedding weight for safety. You know, turning a massive plane around safely isn't as simple as just pointing the nose back toward Italy. Wide-body planes taking off for long-haul transatlantic flights are loaded with thousands of pounds of fuel. They're actually way too heavy to land right away. Their maximum landing weight is significantly lower than their maximum takeoff weight. So, to fix this, the crew descended to 25,000 feet to perform a really fascinating procedure called fuel dumping, safely releasing excess fuel over the open water of the Atlantic and the Bay of Biscay. I mean, imagine being a passenger and seeing liquid just pouring out of the wings. You'd probably freak out, right? But the flight crew used incredibly calm, authoritative communication to explain exactly what was happening. They assured everyone that this fuel dumping procedure was completely controlled and normal, effectively de-escalating any potential passenger panic before it even started. Section 3. Safe return and next steps. On the ground in Rome. All right, so with the fuel successfully dumped and the aircraft lightened up, it was time to get everyone safely back onto solid ground. And because they flawlessly executed these protocols, the plane landed perfectly safely on runway 16R. Not a single injury. The aircraft parked at a remote stand so engineers could immediately inspect those engines, and the passengers were super well taken care of. They just had to wait a few hours for a replacement flight scheduled for 2300 that evening. The system worked exactly as designed. Section 4. A collision on the tarmac. Charleston International Airport. Now, let's completely switch gears and contrast that high-altitude success with a ground-level failure. On July 18, 2025, a collision took place on the tarmac at Charleston International. While the mid-air crisis we just talked about was handled strictly by the book, this ground incident was a mess. Severe thunderstorms forced multiple flights to divert, which created this unusually crowded, chaotic, and dark nighttime environment on the airport ramp. It was basically a perfect storm for simple human error. Let's look at the two players involved here. First up, we've got a stationary Breeze Airways Airbus A220, Flight 509. It had diverted from Las Vegas because of the storms and was just parked there with 93 passengers on board waiting for fuel. Second, we have an all-Nippon Airways, or ANA, Boeing 787, Flight 9397. This was a brand new jet, fresh from the factory, operating as a ferry flight with just a crew of 5, taxiing its way toward departure for Tokyo. Section 5. The NTSB Final Report, a chain of errors. So, what exactly went wrong between the parked Airbus and the moving Boeing? Well, the newly released July 2026 National Transportation Safety Board Final Report tells us exactly how these two planes collided at 9:49 p.m. It paints a pretty vivid picture of a dark, crowded ramp that lacked proper taxiway centerline lighting. In this tricky environment, the massive Boeing's left wingtip literally clipped the vertical stabilizer, the tail fin, of the parked Airbus. 5 people ended up with minor injuries, and the damage to the Airbus was really substantial. It required a full replacement of the tail fin and rudder, which grounded the jet for 2 whole months. The crucial point the NTSB found here is that the blame actually lies on both sides. It was a classic chain of errors. First, ground personnel improperly parked the Breeze Airbus past the clearance boundary, so its tail was just sticking out into taxiway M. Second, the moving ANA Boeing crew failed to maintain adequate separation clearance in the dark. Basically, both human elements failed their respective checks. Section 6. The million-dollar legal battle. Fallout from the collision. Unlike our first story, which ended smoothly with a replacement flight, the fallout from this ground incident sparked a massive, ongoing legal battle. $6.5 million. That staggering number is what Breeze Airways is actively seeking in their lawsuit against ANA. They're trying to recoup massive costs for structural repairs, the lost revenue from having an aircraft grounded for 2 months, and the passenger legal claims that popped up after the incident. This messy aftermath really highlights the financial reality of human error in aviation. We now have 2 airlines offering completely competing narratives in a U.S. district court about who is truly responsible. Breeze is arguing that the moving plane is entirely at fault for hitting a stationary object. ANA, on the other hand, is arguing that the plane never should have been parked in the taxiway path to begin with. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to consider this question. We've seen how the aviation industry is incredibly, remarkably safe when rigorous procedures are followed, like turning back over Europe and communicating calmly. But we've also seen how financially and physically vulnerable the whole system becomes when human judgment falters on a dark, crowded tarmac. Thank you so much for joining me, and definitely keep this delicate balance in mind the next time you board a flight.